Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Very hypocritical proposition here, and I think United States thinks that it can get in everybody's business and dictate and point out to other countries' misgivings, or mistakes, or really corruption, and try to somehow make them change course because they said so. But the United States of America, unfortunately, and I'm all for it. I live in the United States of America. I love the United States of America. That's why I'm talking about this, because I want these things to change. You can't be a hypocrite. The United States of America hasn't been looking in a mirror for some time, or maybe ever, to realize that things that he demands of others doesn't demand of itself, which is hypocritical, isn't it? And very unjust. So what happened now? We have an article from The Hill, and here it is. US says Russia will be held accountable for fate of Navalny. Now, for a country to say that to another country regarding a Russian citizen, my brain, I don't want to go deeper in that, tells me that Navalny is their man. Most likely, their being the US's man. So he is supposedly the opposition to Vladimir Putin, the head of the opposition. Why do you care, United States of America? Do you care about the Russians? Do you really care about the Russians so much that you care what Navalny does? Well, if you get information from people who work in this kind of system, you're going to realize that when a country tells another country not to touch someone, that means that guy is this guy's. Is on the payroll of those guys. I do not know if Navalny is an American agent, or however we want to call it. I don't know that. But I have 99%, or I should say overwhelming indications or indicators pointing towards that's the case, including this last statement. Now, let's start like this. United States has no, he can say whatever it wants, but then Russia can also tell United States the same thing. So let's start with this one. Can Russia tell the United States of America if anything happens to Donald Trump, the United States will be held accountable? Can they say that? Of course they can. How do you think that will be perceived here? Okay, let's say the Russians would say if anything happened to the guys that protested at Capitol on January 6th, they will be held accountable if anything happens to those guys. How would that be received by the Americans? We'll be like, what the hell are these guys talking about? But guess what? The Russians are not allowed to say that because somehow they are below what these guys pretend to be. You understand? That's the first one. Now let's get real. This is just a moral thing. Now let's put it in reality. US says Russia will be held accountable for fate of Navalny. United States of America, looked from the Russian perspective, just tries to destroy them. Just try to, pull a Gaddafi on Putin. Putin has an approval rating of about 80%. So obviously he's loved by 80% of the population, unlike Biden or any other Western leader. So that means these guys support these guys, and this NATO, which is United States of America, is perceived that wants to attack and destroy Russia. So why would they care about what you say? That's the first thing. Do you think I'm going to listen? Okay, that's a second one. The third one, what are you going to do exactly? More that you already do in Ukraine. This will be what the Russians will tell the Americans. When I say Americans, I'm not saying American citizens. I'm thinking about the guys in charge of you and me and others, right? Or you and I. So what can you do? Nothing. You can't do anything more that you're already doing it. What do you think you're going to tell the Indians or the Chinese to not talk to Russia, to become narcissistic like you and give them the silent treatment? Do you think because of Navalny? Do you think you're going to have this power? You tried with blackmail. You tried with investments. You tried to isolate China. You got threats, India, and you couldn't do it. You think you're going to do it with Navalny? Are you delusional? Yep, I think they are. But they're going to tell us that the international community, remember, for these guys here, are about 3 countries or 4 countries. The rest, they don't matter. I will tell you why. Do you remember how the United States of America voted not only in the United Nations Security Council about that resolution of a ceasefire for humanitarian reasons in Gaza? They were the only country vetoing it. So out of 15, there were 1 that were vetoing it. Great Britain was like, we don't want to get involved in this one. And the rest of 13 voted for the resolution. So the world community? Now, that was the first one. The second one was the General Assembly, remember? A few days ago. Again, with the same reason. Who is for the humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza? Do you remember? I know exactly how many there were. It was 153 were for the resolution out of 193. So that's a big majority. They were for the resolution. There were 22 that were like, we don't want to upset the boss too much. You want to come and get us. And then there were nine, United States and Austria. And then it was Palau, Micronesia, Papua New Guinea, and Paraguay, I think. These were the countries that voted. That was the world community at that point. There was no other Western country beside Austria. I don't know how the fuck they got lost there. Who voted against a ceasefire in, I kind of know, but anyway. And who's the world community here? So who was isolated? Obviously, the United States of America. So they were there in this article, I'm going to show you, to claim the world community. The U.S. State Department, all right, said Friday that the international community will hold Russia accountable for what happens to Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny in their custody. So that means if Navalny just, I don't know, is diagnosed with something, is because of the Russians? Could be. I'm going to tell you a personal story that happened to me a few days ago. And we have communicated the Russian government that they are responsible for what happens to Mr. Navalny in their custody, and they will be held accountable by the international community, like we are, alone, in the dark. And everybody else was on the other side regarding the vote, not us, they. A statement by a spokesperson for the State Department reads, now what would you do if you will be a Russian official? We say, who are you to talk? You just want to kill us. And you tell me this? Jesus Christ, so ridiculous. So ridiculous. Remember, the Russians can point out to this perfect society here in many ways. Like, hey, what are they going to do with Joe Biden and his son? How about the Burisma? What's going on with that laptop? Corruption. Well, the whole community sees how you operate. And these are just tiny, eeny, meeny, miny, mo things. But Russia doesn't say that. Or if he says, these guys are going to be like, scoffing, right? Now let me tell you my direct experience. The first thing would be this. Well, now anything that happens to Navalny would be obviously placed on the Russian officials. Is that logical? No. So let's say Navalny dies tomorrow. Who's going to conduct the autopsy? Or the whatever, coronary, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be the Russians. Why would they invite the Americans? Would the Americans invite the Russians? Obviously not. They didn't even let them investigate the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 pipelines done by... Okay? So beat it. Now let me tell you because logically it's like this. Now, if anything that happened to that guy, he doesn't have a hard-on, is because of the Russians. They put some things in his food, possibly. Now, if find out he's got cancer, it's because of the Russians. Could be. But you have the evidence? No, and you will never have the evidence. Because he's in the custody of the Russian Federation, not American Federation. As other people, again, are in the American custody and in the system here, right? Like Donald Trump, for instance. And not only, you can go and not only get Donald Trump, you can get many others. And see, Steve Bannon, take another one. And many others I can point out that they were treated very nicely. Remember the Proud Boys guy from Cuba, the Cuban American? He was charged and convicted for 22 years for trying to overthrow the government and so on. Now those guys could say, if something happens to that guy, the whole community, what? None of your business. Correct. But these guys stick their nose in everybody else's job. So let me tell you what happened to me. Personal story. A few days ago, recently, 3 days, 4 days ago, during this week, I visited my doctor, my medic. I don't like to call them doctors, I call them medics. So the medic. And he tries to, in my assessment, give me some medication, and I don't want to take medication because I don't like medication, And anyway, you're not clinically wrong. You're not at that clinical level. You are preclinical. So that means you have these little numbers here that are at the top, at highest, like extreme, that too much. Am I sick? No, but potentially in the future you can do that. So arguments back and forth. Obviously, if I don't want to take something, I don't take something. I said I feel good. I don't have any problem. Prevention. I know how prevention works in my investigative field. Prevent something, and then you enter in everybody's lives, and you never come out. I'm talking about the U.S. government. So the same, preventing. Well, preventing what? It's like I go to a medic and say, well, you got a little splinter here, but if you don't treat it, it's going to turn into cancer. Therefore, we got to cut the finger. Oh, yeah, cut the finger then. Just because it can develop into an infection, and then you got this and that, and you're going to turn into cancer. Scare tactics. So take this medication, do this, and fuck off. So nevertheless, I said, okay, but I said, all the medication, I said, I'm afraid of the side effects. I know all medication, the pills, got side effects. Because I'm going to take this for this garbage that I'm not sick, and then I'm going to have a different reaction. My liver is going to be affected. Actually here. My liver is going to be affected. My kidneys. Some other things will develop, and then how am I going to find out it was because of this? And then they're going to prescribe me another medication, and that was going to be another medication creates other side effects. And then another one, and I'm going to be with an excavator putting pills in my mouth. I'm going to be a pill popper or something. I don't want to do that. And he said, well, if you take this one and something happens, you have something. Don't come and say it's because of this one. You can make the connection. Like, if you decide to take the medication that I'm prescribing you, and then you have a little somewhere, don't think that that's because of this. Really? So he was logical, obviously. And I said, I'm not an idiot. If I'm going to decide to take this little medication, I'm not going to come immediately if it's because of that. I'm not going to do that. But the same here. So the medic was logical. But these guys are not going to be logical. Anything that happens to that guy is on you. So if I'm going to have, let's say, take that medication, I'm going to have something, I'm going to say, it's because of you. I sue you, motherfucker. He's going to say, what? It's a long way to prove that, buddy. Okay, that was my personal story. But that's logical in our world. But over there, they act like infantile. Why? Because they can. Because they don't have a case. When you want to smack someone and you don't have a reason, you're going to create one. You're going to say, you didn't match your shoes and your socks. Or if it's someone else, you're going to say, you didn't match your purse and your shoes. Or the purse and your belt. Or something like that. And you smack them and say, well, was that the reason for you? Yeah. Because that could turn into something else after that. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Again, the Americans stick their noses somewhere else, I think because Navalny is a guy on their payroll. I know in Romania, names that were on the payroll of the Soviet Union, they were their guys. The Romanian intelligence knew, the Securitatea, they knew these guys were working for those guys. And they knew, they just monitored the guy, and those guys, if something happens to this, you're gonna have a problem. And the Romanian says, okay, no problem. So they took care of this, they monitored everything he was doing. Nothing. So he was over there like a sitting duck. But they got warned by Soviet Union. And the same thing happened with the Americans. They had their people in Romania, in the communist Romania. And they told them, don't touch that one, don't touch that one. If you touch them, we're going to touch yours. That's the way it works. That's a ABC 1, 2, 3. It's not like, oh, let me tell you a secret here and lower my voice. No. So anyway, United States warns Russians. What? You try to destroy them, you try to put a Gaddafi on them and you warn them, what do you think they will show you? Unzip and show a big thing over there? I think so. They will not even respond. I'm surprised that dictator Putin did not got rid of Navalny already. I mean, if this guy, this Putin, would have been the one that these guys portray, that guy would not have even landed in Moscow when he came from Germany. Or many other, accidents happen. If you got the right services involved. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.